Welcome back to yet another Puzzle Cube tutorial video. In this video, we're going to learn how to take our presentation file and turn it into an expanded or exploded drawing file in Inventor. So in the last video, again, we talked about how to take our assembly file. We pulled it apart and made this presentation. And if I come down here and click the play button, I got to take my cursor and drag it back. Right? We can create a cool animation that shows how this part comes together, how all the different parts in here interact with one another. But there's going to be certain times when a video may not be the best method of communication. And so what we're going to do is create an expanded drawing. We're going to take this final product here, where we had all the tweaks created, our project pulled apart, and we're going to create a drawing in our drawing file that looks like this. So I've already got my Puzzle Cube drawing files open here. If you don't, go ahead and pause at this point and you can open yours up. And you can see on mine, I've got 5 sheets. Each sheet is a different part that makes up my Puzzle Cube. And so what I want to do now is I want to go to my place views, and I'm going to add one additional sheet to this drawing file. All right, we'll go ahead and we'll fill this out. This is IED. My name, I've been doing my first initial and last name. You're going to want to stick with however you formatted your name for these other ones. I'm going to call this my exploded drawing. You can go ahead and fill in which class period you're in, and I'm going to come back to this drawing scale and fill it in when I'm all done. So I'm going to purposely leave that blank this time, and then I'll click OK. So here's my blank sheet. I'm going to go ahead and click on base, just like I did for all of my other ones. Now, because the last project I was working on was my presentation file, my presentation defaults to my screen right here. If your presentation file doesn't open up, you may have to click this search button. And then you're going to want to look for files that are an IPN type. That's your presentation file extension there. So I narrowed my search down by IPN, and I came up with my Puzzle Cube assembly here. So I've got it on my screen. One thing I'm noticing is the way it projects on my screen here, and the way I had it on my screen here, my blue part is in the back left-hand corner. And that's the way I wanted it, to get these nice straight lines, no parts overlapping. Here in my preview, my blue part is down in my lower right-hand corner. So I need to take this view cube and spin it around 180 degrees. So I've got it oriented the way I want. The other thing I want to do is I'm going to take and make this view a little bigger. So it defaulted for me to a 1/4 scale. I might go half. 1:1 is looking pretty big. So I might stick with a half for now. And I can always come back and change that later on. Okay, the other thing I'm going to do, I know I'm going to put some annotations in here to give information about this file. I'm going to put those annotations probably over on the right-hand side. So I'm just dragging this view off to kind of the left-hand section of my drawing sheet for now. And then before we click OK, I want this to be a shaded in drawing, so I'm going to click on the shaded style tile. Right. So there's my presentation file. It shows how all of these parts in my previous 5 sheets come together. I'm going to go ahead and just save it right now. It's asking me if I want to update some other files that I've changed along the way, and I do, so I'm going to say yes to all down here, and then OK. And it'll update and make those changes for me. So now we're going to go to the Annotate tab. Typically at this point, this is where we'd hit Dimension and start adding some different dimensions, but I'm not going to dimension this drawing. I want to create a parts list that tells the prospective client about the materials and the parts that makes this up. So I'm going to come up here to this parts list command and click on parts list. And now it wants to know what source it's creating a parts list for. We've only got one view in here, but sometimes you might make a parts list for a file that's got multiple views or maybe even multiple base files in it. This one doesn't, so we're just going to come over and click on our one base view. And then it asks, which direction do you want to wrap the table? I'm just going to stick with the defaults on here and say left. So I'll click OK. And then it brings out this box. This is my parts list. Typically, the parts list is going to end up locked into one of the four corners of your project. And I'm going to put mine in this upper right-hand corner. And it tells me I need to update some drawing components. It says my puzzle cube assembly. So I'm going to go to my puzzle cube assembly and just click the save button. All right. Hopefully that took care of this exclamation point. I'll go ahead and click on update model. There we go. So again, to get rid of that, I right-clicked where that lightning bolt was and then clicked on update model. And it seemed to take care of that error message, should you get an error message like that too. All right, so back to where we were. I just put my parts list on here, and I'm doing my engineer thing. I'm kind of evaluating what just happened and asking myself, is this what I wanted? Does this look the way I would expect it to? And I don't like the fact that I've got this empty description column here. So we're going to get rid of that next. I'm going to right-click on my parts list. I'll come down to Edit Parts List. And then once this Edit menu opens up, I'm going to click on the column chooser. And over here under Selected Properties, these selected properties are the four headings that I've got at the top of my table: item, quantity, part number, and description. And I want to get rid of that description column because there's nothing in it. So I'm going to click on description and then I'll remove it. And, I do want to add a column here. So I'm going to scroll down and find the material column. This will give the prospective client information about the material we're making this out of. So I'm going to click on material. I'll click add. Now I've got that material column over here. Right, so I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And you can see here on our little preview menu, now it tells me all of these parts are made out of birch wood, which would satisfy that client's criteria of making this project out of a hardwood material. Right, so I'm going to go ahead and click OK down at the bottom, and it'll update my parts list. And now at this point, you can go ahead and you can do a little formatting. If I come over to the side of the columns, I can shrink down some of these columns here. They're a little wider than they need to be. I could probably even shrink down my part number. And maybe I want to get this all on one line just so it matches up. I can take and drag that birch wood and make it a little bit bigger. And so now I've got my parts list the way I want. I can come back here now and maybe make this section a little bit bigger by adjusting the scale. So again, I'm going to hover over here, get those red polka dot lines. I'll double click. I'm going to go back to 1:1. We'll see if that fits. And, I might be able to make this work if I put these parts up here and then I drag, my parts list. Oh, this isn't cooperating now. All right, I want to put my shapes up here. And then can I move my parts list to this other corner? There we go. So it wasn't letting me select my parts list before because it kept wanting to grab hold of my drawing. All right. So again, everybody's project's going to be a little different at this point. Whoops. All right. You may or may not want to do that, depending on how your project is shaped. Right? And now I can see here this blue part is kind of touching the borderline. So I might even come over to this base view, double click on it, and I might drag this down just a little bit. All right. So I like what I've got there. Again, 1:1 work for my scale. You might have to go at a half scale. You might try and customize it, maybe make it like 0.75. That is totally up to you. It's going to depend kind of on how your part comes together. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and save what I got again here so I don't lose it. And I'll click on OK to update all the files that it depends on. Right, now the last thing we want to do is, you'll notice over here there's an item number and it's numbered 1 through 5. Right now, we don't have these items on our drawing numbered. So the final thing I'm going to do is come up here to my balloon tool. Yours might look like this when you get started. I'm going to click this drop down and go to Auto Balloon. And this is going to let me add little balloons, which are circles with arrows pointing at my 5 parts to give them their item numbers. So on the selection area over here, the first thing I need to do is select my view set by clicking on my presentation view that I've put in here. Now it says add or remove components. Okay, I want all of my components to get a balloon. So I'm going to click and drag a box that encompasses all 5 of my components. Okay, and I can tell all 5 are selected because they've got blue lines on the edge now. And then I'm going to come over here to select placement. And this placement option is going to let me pick where I want these 5 balloons with the part numbers in them to go. So I'm just going to click once to set them in and kind of look at these. Around is probably going to be our best bet for most of us because it'll put these arrows out around the object. We're going to have to tweak them a little bit to get them inside of the border line. Typically, we don't want the leader lines crossing parts or crossing extension lines. And I'll show you how to fix that in just a minute. So let's take a look here. Horizontal, we got a lot of crossed lines. Vertical, again, we've got a lot of crossed lines. I think I'm going to go with a round and just know that I got to do some editing here when I'm finished. So we'll go ahead and click OK. And as I just mentioned, a balloon should, first of all, be inside of the border line. So I'm going to click the little green grip on balloon number 1 and drag it down this way. Balloons should also ideally not cross over parts or extension lines. All right, so we want to keep those balloons on the outside of the drawing. And so I'm just going to have to come through and kind of quick clean this up. All right, now it would be possible too if I wanted to do something like with this number 2. Maybe I wanted it down here, but I thought, oh, that's kind of confusing to have the arrow in the middle of my part. I can always click on the other end of the arrow and move that around a little bit as well. So again, maybe I want to have part number 5 over here, but now I've got that extension line crossing my part. I may have to click on, the arrow and move the arrow back to this side. So now the extension line is just pointing to my part. It's not going across it. All right, so again, I'm looking at this, trying to kind of make sure everything is the way I want it. I've got all of my parts are easy to see. I've got extension lines pointing back towards that central part. All of my parts are labeled now. I like what's going on here, so I'm going to click Save. And then when I first opened up this sheet, I mentioned I'm not going to fill my scale in yet because I didn't know what it was going to be. The very last thing I'm going to do is come over here next to sheet 6. I'll click the triangle if I need to so I can find this title block. I'll click the triangle next to title block. That'll open up this field text option, and then I can double click on that. And this will let me edit all of the information on my title block. So I need to scroll through here. Here's my drawing scale, and I ended up using a 1-to-1 scale on here. So I'm going to do 1:1. If you used a different scale, you would put in a different ratio there to indicate what your scale was. And then we can click on OK. And congratulations, you have got a really nice, complete set of drawings for your object. Your instructor will go through how to turn these in with you in a lesson in class.